Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 9th episode of Genealogy Pep Talk, a podcast. My name is Cindy, and I am a library specialist with the Arapahoe Libraries here in Colorado. I also have two friends who are usually my fellow co-hosts. There's Suzanne, a library specialist, and Katie, a reference librarian. Hi, ladies. But they're not going to answer. Suzanne and Katie may have won the lottery. We're not quite sure. Since we haven't heard from them, it could be possible. However, in the meantime, we do have Tegan, who is also a reference librarian. Hi, Tegan.
Hello.
This podcast is about gathering some tips and tricks for your family's search journey for whenever you get stuck on searching for an ancestor, because that does and will happen. We also share with you some of our own experiences, anecdotes, and stories in researching our own families. Tegan and I have had conversations about school yearbooks, and we're going to share it. Do you still have your yearbooks? I think Suzanne said she tossed hers. But Tegan and I have faithfully kept our yearbooks over the years. So we're going to look back at your ancestors, or maybe yourselves, on school yearbooks. We'll check out yearbooks on Ancestry.com. So you click on Ancestry Library Edition from our website, which is arapahoelibraries.org. Go to the Research tab, click the Genealogy tab, then scroll down to Ancestry Library Edition, where you'll have to enter your library card number and your PIN number. Once you get to Ancestry.com, then go to Search at the top of the Ancestry webpage and click All Categories. Then look to the right-hand side of the webpage and look for Schools, Directories, and Church Histories. Click on the word More. On the right-hand side of that webpage, you will see School Lists and Yearbooks, and finally you're there, so click on that. From there, you start typing family members' first and last names, birth years, cities they lived in, hit search, and hopefully you'll be able to find some really interesting pictures. Okay, so we do have Tegan on as a special guest because she is the one who brought this whole conversation and subject to light for us amateur genealogists. So Tegan, how did you start finding out about how you could find ancestors or family members on the yearbooks tab?
So during COVID, I was just trying to learn some new things and prepare for different ways that could help patrons once we returned in person. So I had taken a genealogy course. I don't know if it was from that course or just my playing around in Ancestry.com, but somewhere along the way, I stumbled upon the yearbooks on Ancestry. And on a whim, I was like, well, let me just see if I can find my grandma. She's from a small town in South Dakota. So I was like, if there's anything, it's probably be pretty easy to find her high school and find her yearbook that way. Sure enough, I pull it up and Alexandria High School, and there's one option, 1965. I pull it up and it's her senior yearbook.
That's so amazing that one yearbook, out of all the yearbooks they could have digitized, was that one with your grandma. So that's kind of like it was meant to be.
Right.
And it's funny that you were tinkering around on the website, because that yearbooks tab is not super evident when you're on there. You kind of have to tinker around to get to that actual tab.
Yeah. It might have been tied to the genealogy course I had taken of playing with different features on the website that I found it, because I don't know if I would have stumbled on it just by myself, because there are so many different ways to find all the things in Ancestry that are available to you.
Yeah, it's just one of the hidden gems on the website.
Yeah.
So did you just see her class picture, or what else did you see in her yearbook?
I just started clicking through just to see who was in there and landed through like the senior class individual photos, and she's just right there in the center of the page. And I was like, oh, there's Grandma.
So she kind of still looks the same. It's not like she's completely different.
Yeah. And I'd seen photos, too, of her younger, like when she married my grandfather. And so, like, I knew what she looked like. I mean, she does still look the same to me. So, yeah.
Without the 60s dude.
Yeah, she still kept like kind of that short hair and the bangs and everything. So, I mean, it just looks like grandma to me. So
That's so awesome. Did you find any other pictures of her or any clubs or any activities that she was in or did?
I found so many things. There was apparently, I think it was the homecoming festivities. She was a part of the homecoming court.
Wow.
She didn't win, but she was a part of the court and was like, wow, that's actually really cool. Like every high school girl's dream almost, right?
Right.
So,
right.
oh, my grandma was there.
And she never mentioned anything like that. Not that she might have an occasion to, but still, it's like she never mentioned that. So you had no idea. You would have had no idea.
Right. I just stumbled upon it. And like there were so many other cool things that I found in here. Like she won the Betty Crocker Homemaker Award. So there's a photo of her here with a sewing machine. And my mom learned to sew from my grandma. And
Wow, that's great.
yeah.
My mom was a sewer, and I still can't do it, but anyway, but that's funny. So you can totally tell the era that your grandma was in because of the Betty Crocker Award. So you know it must have been 50s, 60s era.
Right. Yeah. I mean, she was super involved in school. I think the thing that like I didn't fully realize, she was actually on the yearbook staff and helped make the yearbook. Like, I mean, she's all throughout this yearbook. She was super involved in school. She did a ton of different stuff. But I think that excited me the most because I also helped create the yearbook at my school. In going through this, like finding all the ways that I'm really similar to my grandma and our interests was really fun.
Yeah, so that just kind of ties it all up in a nice little neat package.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, I was on my yearbook staff too, so that is always a really fun thing to do when you're in high school.
Yeah. I loved it so much that even my senior year, they kind of moved electives around in the schedule. And the yearbook course conflicted with my orchestra course. But the teacher knew I loved being on yearbook, so she still gave me some pages and let me come in on my off hours to work on my pages. So I still got to be involved in it.
That's dedication. That's really nice. And it's nice that she was flexible enough to let you be able to be involved in that.
Yeah.
So seeing all those different things that your grandma was involved in, you know, on the homecoming court, those different things, did that kind of open up a new, different view of your grandma? I mean, because you've always known her as your grandma, and she's always been a grandma for you. So did that just kind of give you an inside look like, wow, my grandma did this and that? And
I think it gives me like a different connection to her because like growing up, a lot of my family has been like all about sports. Grandma's into sports. They watch football, talk about football together. And that was never me. And so then to have this kind of connection that I've done similar things that grandma was also interested in. And so we could talk about that. It was a really fun discovery.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, as an adult, now you know your grandma a lot better than you ever would have dreamed, you know, so you have a lot more connections.
Yeah.
That is just so awesome that you did that. You have really found a much deeper personality in your grandma than you ever would have known or that she would have ever probably even thought to talk about.
Right.
I'm sure you typed in other people's names too. Did you have any luck with that?
Yeah, so actually more recently I started playing with it again just because it was on my mind knowing this conversation was coming up. Well, can I see anybody maybe more recent? And I found my mom. It's actually her junior year yearbook, but technically her senior year because she graduated early. So I sent her a screenshot of that, and then she was like, oh, that's my least favorite photo. Thanks for sharing that. So
her least favorite photo besides the driver's license.
Right. And then I found my dad's senior year, and I sent him that. And then he was like, yep, I was always a handsome guy. And then he was really curious about what I was doing. And he's like, where did you find that? That was kind of fun to tell him about what I was doing.
So that's fun. So you found both your parents, your grandma.
Yeah.
Any surprises with your parents?
No. I mean, I think my dad's was even a photo I had seen before.
Yeah, the senior photo that never goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen that one. My mom's, though, I mean, I don't think she was fully anticipating she was going to be able to graduate that year. So it was just I'm here to get my ID photo. And So she was like, yeah, I don't like that picture.
And that's the one that lives on the internet forever.
Right.
So after we had this conversation, I don't know, a month, 2 ago or something like that, I went on and did the same thing.
Oh, cool.
And my dad was such a surprise. Of course, there's his senior photo, and he had hair. And he was he's never talked about this. He's always was a quiet kind of a person, just a gentle person, aerospace engineer,
Yeah.
I found that not just his senior picture, but he was all through the yearbook, and a lot of it was in theater. The thespian club group shot.
Yeah.
And then there was also, how they show shots of people in the play or
Yeah.
whatever. And there's my dad in almost every one of them.
Wow.
And that to me just seemed like so not him. And I even asked my brothers, I said, hey, did Dad ever talk about being on stage or acting in school plays or anything like that? And they were both like as shocked as me, like, are you sure that was Dad? I'm like, yeah, that is Dad, definitely him. But it was just such a funny thing to see him in such a different light than I knew him as, Mr. Responsible and all that kind of stuff. So that was really, really a treat.
Right. Opens up a different side of like who he was before he was a parent. Like what kind of a youth he had.
Right. And he's in a lot of band shots too. He played like the trumpet, which was the cool thing for the 40s, the big band stuff. So that was not a surprise to see him in that light because he did talk about that, but he never mentioned the theater. So that was just a really cool thing to see. Yeah, adds a whole other dimension to someone that you think you know.
Right.
And then I did find my mom. She grew up in a little tiny town in New York, in upstate New York. And she, too, is quiet. She was always a shy person, not really a social mixer. She'd rather be at home with her family and cooking for us or, It was funny, the different clubs that she was in, too. She was in so many different clubs, like the literary club, stuff we don't have today that they had in the 40s.
So much now. Kids join clubs to put it on their resume and for their college applications. That wasn't as much of a thing in that time. It was more just, I'm really interested in this thing. I'm going to be in this club.
My mom grew up from immigrant parents, so she didn't even know if they were going to be able to send her to college.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they definitely did not do that stuff for resume purposes or college entrance purposes at all. I never even thought of that. That's a really great point.
Yeah.
That kids get involved in so many things because colleges look and see how involved you were in high school and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I was just really surprised that she was in all those clubs too. It was really pretty eye-opening. I wish they were here now. I could talk to them about it.
Yeah.
But even though they're not, it still opens up a really cool dimension.
I was a little more spoiled in that, like, my parents were really young when I was born. So I still got some of that peep into their, like, youthful lives because they were still growing up, too, as I was growing up. So it was a little different in that capacity, but it's still kind of fun to see, like, what were you like before I came along?
Right. They don't talk about that. I guess you don't really think about talking about your high school days with your kids. When is there really an occasion for that to come on up?
Maybe sometimes you don't want your kids to know.
Exactly. There are many things you don't want your children to know. So. But the one thing they do use my yearbook for, this is a disclaimer, but I graduated from high school in the 80s. And so they love to use that yearbook when they have like 80s dress up things or there's your hair. Oh my God, you had feathered hair. That's what they like to look at the yearbook for. I'm glad I saved them.
Yeah. Mine was a little more difficult. Mine was, my mom graduated in 92. 90s, you get like the kind of grunge look. And it's like, well, that's fairly easy.
There is no like real look like the 80s had or
Right.
the 60s bouffant, And it's funny because when you go look at yearbooks, every young lady looks the same and every young man, they all kind of, and you don't realize that we all looked like each other in that time era. It's just kind of funny, like, yeah, we just all kind of looked the same. All our hair was the same and kind of the same clothes or whatever. But
So I graduated in 2010. So it's kind of weird to think about flipping back through those and like seeing what our style was. Like I know emo was fairly big and it's kind of making a comeback. So it's interesting to think about, like, is that what yearbooks from my time are getting used for now? Is that style inspiration?
Yeah, you never know. Maybe your kids will say, when you have them, you'll say, hey, we're going to do a 2000 teens emo party, Mom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'd be like, great.
What did you wear when you know?
Yeah, it's really funny to go in and just see what's in there and what your family members were a part of and the history right there.
Yeah, and it's funny because they're digitized, obviously, and you wonder, like, who is the person that had the 1965, what is it, Alexandria, South Dakota?
Yeah.
Yearbook that decided, hey, I'm going to go and digitize this in.
It does make me wonder. I've wanted to kind of explore it a little bit because then I also went to see, because it has like pretty recent, I think it's like 2015 it goes up to, for yearbooks in the collection. And so I tried to look myself up and none of my yearbooks are in there. And I was like, I have them all. How do I scan them in here for others to access? So.
Oh, I never thought of that. What a great idea.
Yeah.
I wonder how that's for another podcast. We'll have
Right.
to try to
Right.
we'll have to try to find that out. So people out there with your obscure yearbooks from tiny little towns and everywhere, we'll get back to you and let you
Right.
know how you can make that available for your classmates. Yeah, because when I was typing in my dad's name and my mom's name, Little Falls, New York, I mean, in 1945, like, who's going to be digitizing that?
Right.
Somebody obviously did.
Right. Yeah.
So that was just so exciting. I had no expectations of anything.
Yeah, and it's pretty nice too if, say, you're someone like Suzanne who didn't keep your yearbooks, but maybe you just get a little craving for wanting to go back down to your high school days and see what's going on and walk down that memory lane. If it's digitized, it's easy. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to cart it around with you when you move from place to place. It's online.
And they could be lost in other ways during a move, during a flood. All kinds of different things can happen to yearbooks. Mm-hmm. And if they're still there, out there somewhere, yeah, it is a real good trip down memory lane. Because I grew up in Denver, and we had a photographer in my brother's class, my junior year, that's what he was doing. And he took all these pictures around town of Denver and places, the high school kids used to go and everything. And I'm so glad that person did that, because things have changed in this city and so many other cities around the nation. But it's fun to say, oh, yeah, I remember that little ice cream place was right there in that corner. I forgot about that. So I'm so happy so it's not just the people.
Right.
It's also kind of the places.
Yeah, yeah. Especially when you're thinking of a place like Denver that has had such a boom and so much change. That little mom and pop ice cream shop.
It means a lot to you. And
Yeah.
you just think, I have not thought of that in so many years.
Right.
And that just really kind of brings things back home. So another connection, kind of.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, my kids are in college and beyond. I know my oldest daughter actually has her yearbooks, but I'm wondering, do they have physical yearbooks anymore, or is it kind of a digital experience that they don't ever have to carry a yearbook around from house to house, apartment to apartment, how they might do that?
Right. How would that work? Like, would you have some sort of evergreen link to where, though? Like, is it some sort of dashboard you log into?
Everybody has a phone. Everybody can take as many pictures as they want. So I'm wondering if that might be a cool way to just get so many more different kinds of photos.
Right.
Of your schoolmates and yourself and people in the classroom and those kinds of things. So I wonder if that's just opened up new doors.
Right. Like, is there a yearbook club still? And yeah, are they getting the physical book, or is it all digital? Which, selfishly for me, I would want the book. Like, something about being able to have those memories in my hand would feel a lot better.
Yeah, as you said, if there's a link, how long is it really going to last?
Right.
Not forever. So yeah, to me, a physical book, I really love the physical book. And you can just turn page by page and just kind of peruse and say, oh yeah, that's what this looked like. Oh, I forgot
Right.
about that person, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I sadly, I don't know anybody in high school right now, so I'm not sure what that looks like.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to check that out and get back to our listeners as well.
Right.
Or ask staff members who have
Right.
high school kids. So somebody, 50 years from now, trying to look up their grandma, hopefully they'll be able to access it too. So the upside is, if you didn't drag your yearbook with you through years and years, different places that you've lived, in an old trunk, somewhere in a closet or something like that, chances are you're able to access it and kind of go back in time for yourself, not just for your parents or grandparents or any other family member. So that's a great thing. But then if you have your yearbook, let's really try to find out how those could be digitized.
Right.
Because we don't know who digitized those, who did have my dad's 1944 yearbook,
Right.
and was able to digitize it. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, if you've got the yearbook and you're at your house, like, it's so easy to scan it in. I would like to explore more how to do that.
Yeah, and make somebody's day.
Yeah.
We all have these resources, and it would be great if we could utilize them and contribute to them.
Yeah.
So I think that about wraps it up. And remember, at the end of every podcast, we have a disclaimer. We are not certified genealogists. We are just some people in a library sitting around and chatting about genealogy. And we hope that some or all of this information helps you along the way to finding your family and hopefully a really interesting yearbook. Thanks for listening. So say goodbye, lady.
Bye.
We'll see you later.